This commander bullied a Navy SEAL and his dog. Seconds
Chiefs.
later,
You
he was
alright?
in handcuffs.
You on?
He called a Navy SEAL's dog worthless. He mocked the man who once risked his life for strangers. But that moment of arrogance would cost him everything. Because beneath the silence of that scarred soldier was an investigation that would shake the base to its core. This is their story. The California sun burned across the wide-open sky as Senior Chief Owen Hale drove the dark SUV over the Coronado Bridge. The ocean below shimmered like glass, beautiful, distant, and cold. Beside him sat Shadow, a black German shepherd whose calm eyes scanned the horizon. Owen's right knee ached as he eased the car toward the Naval Base Coronado gate. His transfer orders described him as recovering from injury, PTSD, and treatment. That label was his disguise. He wasn't here for therapy. He was here for truth. 3 months ago, his best friend, Lieutenant Mark Conway, died during a covert operation that went wrong. Too wrong. And every trail Owen followed led to this base. The guards saluted him, eyes softening at the sight of the service dog. "Welcome to Coronado, Chief." He nodded, hiding the storm behind his calm face. His new quarters were sterile. White walls, metal bed, and silence that echoed. He unpacked slowly. Only what mattered. A photograph of him and Mark, their dog sitting proudly between them, and a small flash drive labeled Conway, a final log. Shadow sniffed the corners, tail low but alert before resting by the door. Owen crouched, running a hand through the dog's thick fur. "Just a little longer, boy," he whispered. "We find what happened to him. Then we go home." Outside, the flag on the base fluttered against the afternoon wind, proud, perfect, and unaware of the rot beneath its pole. The next morning, Owen reported for the newcomer briefing. Rows of uniformed men sat stiffly as Colonel Victor Drummond strode in. His presence filled the room before his voice did. He was tall, iron-haired, with the face of a man who never doubted his own authority. "Welcome to Coronado," he began, tone sharp as steel. "This base represents the highest standard of the Navy. We do not tolerate weakness. We do not excuse failure. We do not accommodate emotional fragility." His gaze swept the room and stopped on Owen. Drummond's lips curved. "In my day, warriors didn't need therapy dogs to hold themselves together." The air thickened. A few men shifted uncomfortably. Owen stayed still, expression unreadable. Shadow didn't move a muscle. Drummond smirked. "But I suppose times have changed. These days even broken men need badges of pity." Owen said nothing. His silence was his shield. Shadow's eyes flickered, focused, unflinching on the man who just insulted them both. When the briefing ended, whispers followed Owen out the door. He'd arrived less than a day ago, and already he was a marked man. But that was fine. Drummond thought he'd humiliated a broken SEAL. He had no idea he'd just stared straight into the eyes of his own reckoning. That night, the officers' club was alive with chatter and clinking glasses. Dark wooden walls glowed under amber light. Owen entered quietly, Shadow at heel, the faint scent of whiskey and varnish mixing in the air. He ordered soda water. The bartender didn't ask questions, but everyone else seemed to. Heads turned, voices lowered, then came the tap on his shoulder. Well, look who's come crawling in," Drummond said, flanked by Major Kyle Riker, his bulldog of a deputy. Owen turned slightly. "Evening, sir." Drummond's grin was thin. "Just checking on our new arrival." "Must be hard. Living off sympathy, not strength." Major Riker laughed and raised his glass. "Heard you lost a man overseas. Guess not everyone's built for pressure." The words landed like stones. Owen's hand tightened on his glass, but his voice stayed calm. "Lieutenant Conway was the best man I ever served with." Riker shrugged, then deliberately tipped his drink, spilling whiskey across the floor near Shadow. "Oops, didn't scare your mutt, did I?" Drummond chuckled. "Careful, Major. Dogs like that belong in therapy centers, not military bases." The room fell silent. Owen looked up, his voice quiet even. "Shadow's a decorated K-9 officer, sir. He's pulled men out of burning vehicles and located 6 missing soldiers. He's earned his place here more than most." No one breathed. Drummond's face darkened. For the first time that night, his authority cracked. The next morning, Owen found his therapy session canceled due to scheduling error. The clinic was empty. The receptionist couldn't meet his eyes. An hour later, a memo appeared, effective immediately. All non-essential animals restricted from the gym, library, and mess hall. Signed Colonel V. Drummond. It didn't say his name, but everyone knew. At lunch, tables filled quickly, except the one where Owen and Shadow sat alone. But isolation didn't break him. It focused him. He spent the days following protocol, keeping quiet, and walking long loops around the base, limping slightly to sell the act. At night, when lights dimmed, he opened his laptop. Files, old operations, communications, transfers. He was connecting dots no one else dared to see. One night, as Shadow slept beside his boots, Owen whispered, "We're close, buddy." He covered something up, and Mark died for it. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the Pacific. Somewhere deep inside the base, guilt was starting to tremble. Days turned to weeks. The pattern was clear: surveillance, harassment, intimidation. Drummond's men began random inspections. His quarters were searched twice. Once, Shadow's food bowl was overturned, filled with bleach. Owen reported it calmly. No one investigated. That evening, Major Riker approached him at the track. "You think your reputation means anything here, Chief?" he said, voice low. "You're a guest and one signature away from being dismissed," Owen simply replied. "Then maybe you should ask yourself why I'm still here." Riker's smirk faltered. Later that night, Owen drove off base, parked under the dark span of the bridge. He plugged in the flash drive labeled Conway, final log. Mark's voice filled the truck, faint and broken. "If this reaches you, Owen, it means I found proof. Drummond's been selling intel to foreign contractors. They killed my team to keep it buried." Owen closed his eyes. The truth burned like a wound reopened. The storm outside cracked, thunder mixing with his heartbeat. Tomorrow, the hunter would stop pretending to limp. The next morning, Owen's calm was gone, replaced by focus. He stopped limping. His steps were steady, eyes sharp. The act was over. He knew he couldn't confront Drummond yet. He needed proof, undeniable military-grade evidence. And he knew where to start. At night, under the cover of routine patrols, Owen slipped into the communications annex, a low, dimly lit building that buzzed softly with hidden electricity. Shadow padded silently beside him, the red light on his vest switched off. Owen inserted a small drive into an unsecured port. Screens flickered. Encrypted files began to mirror. He moved quickly, then footsteps. He froze. A young ensign entered, half asleep, holding a cup of coffee. Owen stayed in the shadows, one hand on Shadow's collar. The ensign yawned, checked a monitor, and left. Only when the footsteps faded did Owen exhale. "Good boy," he whispered. Shadow's tail flicked once, barely audible. Back in his quarters, the data revealed what he feared. Unmarked payments from Redland Tactical Systems, a defense contractor blacklisted for espionage, routed to Drummond's private offshore. Account dates matched the missions Mark had, flagged before his death. The betrayal was clear. The commander had traded lives for money. Owen sat in silence for a long time. Then he whispered to the empty room, "You didn't die for nothing, Mark." Shadow pressed his head against Owen's leg, quiet understanding between man and dog. The next sunrise over the Pacific didn't feel beautiful anymore. It felt like the calm before a reckoning. Drummond wasn't a fool. He sensed movement, unseen, invisible, but real. He summoned Major Riker. "Keep an eye on him," he ordered. The crippled SEAL's limping a little too straight. Riker nodded. Within hours, Owen's vehicle was flagged for inspection. His room was searched again, and this time, something was planted. When Owen returned that afternoon, 2 military police officers were waiting. Chief Hale, you're under investigation for data tampering. Owen's jaw tightened. What data? We found an unauthorized drive in your locker. One replied he knew it wasn't his, but he also knew resisting would only prove their point. He raised his hands calmly. I'll cooperate, but you might want to check who signed the search order. The MPs exchanged glances. Colonel Drummond, sir. Owen gave a small smile. Of course. Shadow barked once, low, controlled, a soldier's instinct echoing his handler's calm fury. That night, confined to his quarters under temporary restriction, Owen opened a hidden compartment beneath his bunk, pulling out the real drive with the data. Let him think he's winning, he murmured to Shadow. Because when he falls, it'll be public. Shadow's amber eyes gleamed in the low light. Ready. Every enemy leaves a trail. And every tyrant leaves a witness. For Drummond, that witness was Lieutenant Sarah Cohen, the physical therapist who'd been ordered to cancel Owen's sessions. She found him during an evening walk. Chief Hale, she said quietly, glancing around. You didn't hear this from me, but something's off. Colonel Drummond has been accessing restricted medical files, yours and your friends. Owen stopped walking. Mark Conway's? She nodded. And your dog's training records. That made him pause. Shadow's records? Yes, the colonel called them overclassified nonsense, but I saw the log. Shadow was part of a Black Ops unit, K-9 Tactical Division. Owen looked at her, realization dawning. He knows who we are? Sarah bit her lip. Whatever you're doing, be careful. You're not just fighting a commander-chief. You're fighting his network. Owen nodded once. Thank you, Lieutenant. If something happens to me, go to base security, ask for Captain Rhodes. Give him my name. That night, Owen sat by the window, the wind whipping faintly against the glass. Shadow, he whispered. We don't just have to prove it. We have to show it. He started assembling a plan, one that would expose Drummond before he could bury another soldier's name. The tide was shifting, and it was about to hit like a storm. It happened during morning assembly. Rows of uniformed men stood under the rising flag. Drummond stood on the podium, polished, commanding, untouchable. Owen stepped forward from the crowd, a quiet defiance in every stride. Colonel, he said evenly, I need a word. On record. Drummond's face hardened. Out of line, Chief. Then I'll say it in front of everyone, Owen replied. Murmurs rippled. The air turned heavy. You've been selling classified data, Owen said clearly, and covering it with the blood of men like Mark Conway. Silence, then laughter. Drummond sharp and cold. Bold accusation, Chief. Any proof? Owen held up a flash drive. Enough to end your career. 2 MPs stepped forward at Drummond's signal, but before they reached him, a voice shouted from the back, Sir, base security just issued a warrant. Captain Rhodes appeared, flanked by 2 investigators. Colonel Drummond, he said, voice calm, you're under arrest for espionage and obstruction of justice. For the first time, Drummond's mask cracked. He looked at Owen, the man he'd mocked, the dog he'd called worthless. Shadow stood tall beside his handler, eyes locked. Silent, steady, get your hands off me. Drummond roared, but the cuffs clicked, cold steel against arrogance. Owen didn't smile. He simply said, You should have respected your soldiers, sir. We don't forget who we fight for. The base fell into stunned silence after the arrest. Rumors spread like wildfire about corruption, betrayal, and the SEAL who exposed it all. Owen spent hours in debriefing with investigators. He handed over the files, the voice logs, the transaction trail, every piece of proof that would bring justice to Mark's name. When it was over, Captain Rhodes extended his hand. You did what no one else could. Your friend would have been proud. Owen looked at him, exhaustion softening his voice. He was the kind of man worth fighting for. Outside, the sunset bled across the sky, soft gold melting into red. Shadow walked beside him, tail brushing his leg. They stopped by the shoreline, waves rolling quietly. Owen crouched, resting a hand on the dog's head. "You did good, partner." Shadow leaned into him, eyes reflecting the light of a world that suddenly felt clean again. Somewhere behind them, sirens faded. Justice had been done. But grief still lingered like smoke. Owen looked out at the horizon. "Rest easy, Mark," he whispered. "It's over now." The hangar lights flickered as Commander Rice stood surrounded by his remaining supporters, barking orders that no one followed. His once commanding voice now trembled with panic. Then the metallic echo of boots in or synchronized, firm, filled the space. It was him. Ethan and Shadow walked through the massive steel doors, their silhouettes outlined by the rising sun. Ethan wore his old uniform jacket, medals removed but dignity intact. Shadow, healed and alert, paced beside him, eyes locked on the man who'd betrayed them. Rice sneered. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan's voice was steady, cold. "Neither should you." The two men faced off, the broken commander versus the soldier who'd lived by honor. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid: betrayal, humiliation, loss. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply stepped closer, whispering, "You forgot the one thing every soldier learns: we never leave our own behind." And that's when the doors opened again. Military police marched in, with the Admiral leading them. "Commander Rice," the Admiral said, his voice echoing across the hangar. "You're under arrest for falsifying mission records, abuse of command, and obstruction of justice." Rice's face fell. The handcuffs clicked louder than any explosion. Shadow growled, a low primal sound that carried the justice of every loyal heart betrayed. As Rice was led away, Ethan didn't smile. He didn't even look proud, he just looked tired. Shadow rested beside him, head leaning on Ethan's boot. The Admiral stepped closer, quietly saying, "You didn't just save your name, son. You saved this team's soul." Outside, the base was silent except for the cry of distant seagulls. The sea shimmered and endless, free. Ethan looked at it for a long moment, remembering every friend he'd lost to that same horizon. "Permission to return home, sir?" he asked softly. The Admiral nodded. "Permission granted." The scene cut to a quiet coastal town, Ethan's hometown. He stood on the small dock where his father once taught him how to tie his first knot. Shadow chased waves nearby, splashing through the shallows. Life wasn't about medals anymore. It was about peace. An old woman approached him, the wife of one of his fallen teammates. "I heard what you did," she said. Ethan lowered his head humbly. "They deserved better," she smiled faintly. "You gave them that." Ethan looked at the setting sun. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like a beginning. Back at the SEAL base, a new plaque was installed. For those who stand when it's easier to fall. Ethan's name wasn't there. He didn't want it to. But the names of his lost brothers were carved in silver. He placed Shadow's paw print below them in the wet cement, a symbol of loyalty that would outlive all of them. Months later, a young recruit arrived at the base. He'd heard stories about a SEAL who stood up to corruption, about a soldier and his dog who reminded the Navy what honor really meant. In the training yard, he spotted a man repairing an old training dummy. It was Ethan. The boy saluted. "Sir, are you the one who—" Ethan interrupted with a faint smile. "Doesn't matter who I am, son. What matters is who you'll become." Shadow barked once, tail wagging as if sealing the message with approval. Ethan walking along the shoreline with Shadow, the golden sun bleeding into the ocean. Some men chase medals, some chase glory, but the real ones, they chase what's right, even when it costs them everything. Inspired by true acts of loyalty and courage. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button. Give it a like and tell us where in the world you're watching from. Because hope deserves to be shared.